Watson, what you doing?
Go away, Alan.
But no, I want to know what you're doing.
I'm reading a book on behaviorism.
Behaviorism? What's that?
Well, let's learn about behaviorism then.
Behaviorism, Alan, is a theory that humans and animal behavior can be explained in terms of conditioning without appeal to thoughts or feelings, and that the psychological disorders are best treated by altering their behavioral patterns. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
So, the behaviorist movement began in 1913 when John Watson wrote an article entitled Psychology as the Behaviorist Views It, which sets out a number of underlying assumptions regarding the following assumptions. Are you bored, Alan?
Not yet.
I hope you won't be later. First one, behavior is learned from the environment. Second, psychology should be seen as a science. Third, behaviorism is primarily concerned with observable behavior as opposed to internal events like thinking and emotion. Sleepy yet?
Not yet.
And then, there is little difference between learning that takes place in humans and that in other animals. Preposterous, right?
A bit.
Behaviorism is the result of stimulus response. Did you understand?
Yes. I'll die myself.
Now, Alan, let's talk about Ivan Pavlov, who is one of the major catalysts to the behaviorist movement. Interested?
Yes. Tell me all about it.
And, like most things, classical conditioning too was discovered by accident. Pavlov showed the existence of the unconditioned response by presenting a dog with a bowl of food and measuring its salivary secretions. In his experiment, Pavlov used a bell as his neutral stimulus. Whenever he gave food to his dogs, he also rang a bell. After a number of repeats of this procedure, he tried the bell on its own. As you might expect, the bell on its own now caused an increase in salivation. Pretty cool, right?
Very.
So the dog had learned an association between the bell and food, and a new behavior had been learned. Because this response was learned, it is called a conditioned response. The neutral stimulus has become a conditioned stimulus. He carried forward this experiment by adding more conditioned stimuli and further studying its association with behavior. Pretty cool, right?
Yes, it is.
Pavlov found that for associations to be made, the two stimuli had to be presented close together in time. He called this law of temporal contiguity. If the time between the conditioned stimulus, that is the bell, and the unconditioned stimulus, the food, is too great, then learning will never occur.
Wow.
Okay, Alan, are you ready for some amazing stuff to listen to?
Yes, Mr. Watson.
Here we go. Pavlov provided important contributions to behavioral psychology, but it was John B. Watson who championed the popular behaviorist movement. Pavlov's contribution was made from the discipline of physiology and was somewhat indirect. His connection with American behavioral psychology was initially made by Watson, who felt that Pavlov's experiment provided a good example of a sound experimental method used to observe the conditioning. This inspired him to do more studies in this field. Let's look at one of his most famous yet controversial experiments, the Little Albert experiment.
The Little Albert experiment? I know all about that. Can I explain it to you?
Go, Alan.
The Little Albert experiment was conducted to show how classic and operant conditioning occurs in humans. It was conducted by John Watson in 1920 at Johns Hopkins University. The subject was a little boy who was 9 months old, who was called Albert B by experimenters, but was later famously known as Little Albert. The boy was first exposed to a multitude of stimulus like a rabbit, a white rat, a monkey, a mask, and burning newspapers, to which the boy exhibited no fear. Am I right, Mr. Watson?
Very good, Alan.
When the boy was about 11 months old, he was exposed to the rat, but this time he paired it with a loud noise caused by a hammer hitting a steel bar. and this was continuously done over the next 7 weeks. The loud noise usually caused little Albert to start crying and attempt to crawl away, and soon, whenever the rat was presented in front of him, he would have the same reaction. Not only was he scared of the white rat, but he started having phobias of objects similar, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, that's called stimulus generalization. Albert started getting scared from all furry things as he got confused among all the stimulus due to the little indifference in them. This experiment raised a lot of ethical concerns, and it's one of the reasons why there are so many ethical issues enforced today. Now that we've learned about classical conditioning, let's learn about operant conditioning. Skinner is credited as the mother. Oops! Father. Happy Women's Day, by the way. Of operant conditioning. He introduced the concept of reinforcement.
But Mr. Watson, what is reinforcement?
Reinforcement, Alan, is something that increases the likelihood of behavior. Reinforcement are of two types, positive and negative. Positive reinforcement increases the likelihood of any behavior because of its positive consequences.
I'm a little confused, Mr. Watson. Can you explain it a bit?
Of course, Alan. To demonstrate this, Skinner specially made a box called the Skinner box, in which animals get food pellets by pulling down the liver. So, a hungry rat was left in the box, and in search of food, he accidentally pulled down the liver that got him food pellets. This behavior was rewarding, so it was repeated in further trials. So here we can see that rewards positively reinforce an action or behavior. There is negative reinforcement, which also increases the occurrence of any behavior.
I'm still very confused. What is the difference between positive and negative reinforcement?
It's okay, Alan. The difference is that in negative reinforcement, the behavior leads to the removal of the unwanted stimulus, which increases the occurrence of any behavior. To check the effect of any negative reinforcement, Skinner gave mild electric shocks to the rats, which can only be stopped by pulling down the liver. To escape the electric shocks, the behavior of pulling down the liver increased. Here, the electric shocks are working as negative reinforcer. Let me tell you something about punishment. Punishment decreases the likelihood of a behavior being repeated. Punishment are also of two types, positive and negative. In positive punishment, the behavior leads to aversive consequences. In negative punishment, any behavior leads to the removal of a pleasant stimulus, which also decreases the occurrence of that particular behavior. Alan, let me give you an example to explain it all. Imagine this. You're back in 3rd grade and you're in class with Miss Johnson. Miss Johnson gives you some classwork to finish and you do it before the hour ends. Miss Johnson gets you a candy. In future too, the expectation of more candy gets you to keep working hard in class. This is due to the reinforcement, that is, the candy. Now, let's imagine you misbehave in class and Miss Johnson gets angry and don't give you chocolate for the work you have done. This is punishment, and in future, you're less likely to misbehave in class.
Mr. Watson, there's so many limitations for behaviorism. Firstly, I learn differently, you learn differently. It doesn't explain individual differences. And secondly, behaviorism explains self-consciousness. Human beings can't think for themselves? No self-awareness? What's with that? Thirdly, it doesn't explain any mental processes like thinking, reasoning, or creativity.
That is how life works, Alan. That is why we have advances in almost everything.
Thank you, Mr. Watson, for teaching me about behaviorism. I really learned a lot. I hope you did too. Thank you so much.
Bye, Alan.
Bye, Mr. Watson.